Welcome back to Lineout Lab. My name is Peter O'Donnell. In this video, I'm going to look at how Ireland used a seven-man lineout and attack to Hinge, or the middle, I suppose, middle of the lineout, and went after a system that Wales looked like they're using a Hinge, but actually it's a scenario where they have two lifters in the middle of the lineout. So let's look in a bit more detail.
Right, let's get into it. So this is the clip that we're looking at, and we have a seven-man lineout. You can see the personnel there. Ireland call a seven-man lineout just outside the 22, and let's look at how they win the ball. So, pretty good ball. 9's past the 12, maybe ever so slightly off, but generally pretty good. They're on the front foot. They've relatively quick ruck ball, and they've made 5 to 10 meters from the line. So pretty good outcome. You'd be happy from Ireland's perspective. So let's just look at the personnel, and I'll show you this now in a second. But we have number 3 at the front. We have 6 and 4, so number 3 here. We have 6 and 4 jumpers, and then we have 1, 5, 8, and 2 is the tail gunner. Okay, so our setup, so to speak, is presented that we are kind of on a little bit of a jumper lifter scenario, and then towards the middle front, and then we have a similar sort of setup where we're looking to promote the fact that we have a hinge in the middle and the white one, but the reality is that we actually have two lifters in the middle, which is what Ireland go after, and make it difficult for Wales to compete. Okay, so they were actually trying to promote the idea that we're in this type of setup. But the reality of it is, it was more this type of setup, and this is how what Ireland recognise and what they go after. So I think it's really good recognition from Ireland. As I say, if I go and look at this, we can see like it looks like they should have their bases covered. What I think lets them down a little bit, Wales this is that that number 5, white 5, who's the front lifter of that back pod, so to speak, his body language as we played the move, if we were to play the movement on, we'd see that he doesn't help himself in terms of his shoulders, and there you can see how, look, he's turning, like he's never going to turn to jump, basically. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So white 5 is the front lifter at the back pod. So this guy here, we can see that he is never going to turn to jump in this space, just from his body shape. Now maybe he could also double bluff and present that picture and then actually go and do it, but it's much more challenging. So even at that, could they have, could they have possibly got up, which I'll come back to. But so this is the setup that they really have. But this was the setup that they were trying to, I suppose, illustrate or show. So it didn't work out like that. And ultimately, this is the space that Ireland go after and attack. I know the attacking setup there in the Blues isn't exactly what it was, for example, because there was a 9 at the front and there was a forward +1 that was there. So it's more just generically, I'm looking at how teams defend. So if teams kind of present with that sort of picture, then I think you can really kind of go after those disconnects. So anyone that has to do a few different jobs, anyone that has to do 2 jobs, that's really difficult. And anyone that's maybe kind of presenting a picture, you can certainly go, like, for example, that lifter there, that front lifter of the back pod, you could definitely attack that space. So whether you're trying to go up opposite someone because there's airspace there, there's someone that you're taller against or bigger against or a better jumper against, or you're trying to go like attack maybe that lifting space, or maybe you have to create space. Certainly Ireland have gone for that second option where they're kind of attacking the lifter space, because the hinge isn't really a hinge, he's just a lifter essentially. So it looks like he's a hinge, but really that hinge is a back lifter for that front pod, and the other person who looks like a jumper lifter is really just a lifter. So there's other things you can do. Like sometimes South Africa really compress the front and the middle and the back, and they give you the front. There's no right or wrong to it. It just depends what type of team you are. The thing what South Africa do really well, because they've got such big second row or second jumpers, is that they're very athletic. They really just fling them up, and they really compress that space. So even the lifter space, back to back there, you can see the back lifter of the front of the first jumping pod, let's say, and the front lifter of the pod that's close to the back, they get really tight. So like the jumpers, like when they get up, they're all on top of each other sometimes, and it's really it's really disruptive because they're so good at it. Again, it depends what way you want to go. You can do different. You can go. There's loads of different defensive setups you can do. Sometimes I kind of think it's good to try and have, like, if you have a 5-man line out, for example, you're defending with 3 jumpers, how do you normally defend? And maybe there's ways to incorporate that into your line out. So for example, if I just looked at the hinge to the back, could that be very similar to my 5-man defense line out? Or do I, maybe I've put 3 jumper lifters in the middle there, but maybe there's an extra hinge in the middle. And that might be easier. So essentially you can break your 7-man down into smaller components and take maybe your 5-man defense or your 4-man defense, depending on the team that you're playing or coaching on. And that might just make it a little bit easier to I suppose, carry over your system, and then you're kind of reducing the roles of maybe personnel. So you have a front lifter who has to just lift. You have a jumper who just has to jump, and then they kind of protect the front, and then you have some sort of hinge, and then they can move as well a little bit. You can kind of compress that space also, like you see I've done there. Both lifters are off their 5 meter or off the 5 meter and 15 meter. So for example, if 4 was to go up on the spot, how would the defending team mark it? Well, you're probably still looking at that front pod, or the jumper lifter after the hinge could come forward and go up. There's a few different ways you can kind of go. You could have your system in place, but what I'm saying to you is it's more about the system. So it's more about you can have principles in place, I should say, and this is more about the system that you can have. The principle being like who's going to go up where and whatnot, but the setup could be that, look, this is what we're doing. And equally, you could do something different as well. I'm just throwing that out there, but I'm just saying you can make life a little bit easier for yourself. So I think when Wales try and promote the fact that the white 5, for example, who's the front lifter of that back pod, I like they try and promote the fact that he is a jumper lifter. His body shape doesn't really kind of convince me. And as well, even at that, like I think Ireland probably recognise that he's probably not he's probably not the most athletic jumper in terms of who's sort of kind of gone after him. The other thing as well then to look at from Ireland's perspective, there's 2 interesting things. So the fact is that Wales could get up. So let's look at that. So from here, let's just say, because Ireland end up winning the ball in this kind of middle space, what I like is, so you can see here, first before I kind of talk about the front part of the line out, this bit here, like Wales have kind of, like they're actually okay here. They can kind of, if Tyburn in the blue scrum half here was to go up, or if the +1 was to come in, like this guy can defend Tyburn, or Wainwright can defend Tyburn, and also this man at the back. So they're kind of covering those bases there. So then we have to look at, excuse me, we have to look at the middle front then. How do Wales deal with this? So they don't really do anything there, but I think we have to have better recognition in terms of cues. What cues and clues are we looking for? Because I think they could have got this man up here. And if you go for any sort of boot, like for example, you go for a boost lift or something like that, then I think you potentially could shut that option off. Now I think that's pretty good from Ireland in terms of speed to move and speed to execute. And throw jump lift, there's only a little bit more you'd probably say they could possibly got out in that job, but not a huge amount more. Like that's almost max effort. So it's pretty good. What I think Wales let themselves down on here is, like, whatever about the setup is, they get bought too easily by the movement. So one of the things that I kind of promote about is I talk about the lifters. So like, why don't they jump? Like, maybe they not was if they're setting up there, is the plan to jump? It's a little bit confusing. So I would have thought they'd look and jump, but they don't even bite on that. So yeah, maybe they don't. Maybe they don't want to compete. But yeah, I struggle with that. So they just kind of get frozen, which is what good attacks do, by the way. So by the way, that's not, they kind of get a little bit bought there, and they don't do either. I would have suspected if they were looking to now, if they're worried about 9, maybe, yeah, but like they'd be able to shut that down between this guy. He could really just go, and 11 can kind of really close the door quickly, um, But yeah, I would have thought that we were going to try and compete, but in terms of cues and clues, one thing that I talk about is looking at the lifters, and I think the white 6 here, you could really just be have better recognition of what the lifters do. But from an Irish perspective, what I really like is that any sort of movements forward. So look, they kind of got self forward, and I like the fact that that's pretty good animation, to be honest there. But then if we look at Jack Conan here, I really like how he steps and then turns, steps the front back lift, and then the speed and the movement then is really sharp, and then they're just jumping behind. And I think once you kind of go forward and then jumping behind, it's really hard to defend those types of options. So I think it's a really good option for Ireland, by the way. I'm just, yeah, be interesting with just some of those defensive pictures with Wales. I think need to be a bit more conscious of. So yeah, thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts.